Here now with reaction, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett and former acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker. Matthew, I want to start with you because in the United States, the facts have to match the law. That's why Jack Smith didn't charge Trump on these charges. Also, you look at precedent. This has been used, from what I can tell, a handful of times to prosecute Confederates. Was this intended, the 14th Amendment, Section 3, to disqualify someone like President Trump?
Yeah, Kayleigh, good to be with you, and I thought you did a great job outlining this. I mean, this is a very undemocratic, unconstitutional attempt at really election interference by the Colorado Supreme Court. I mean, this is a close call for them. It was a 4-3 decision, and when you take someone off the ballot and disqualify a candidate, it should be with unbelievable evidence, and the facts are very thin. One of the main facts they try to use, pieces of evidence, is the January 6th commission report, as we all know, was a hyper-partisan, never Trump type thing that was done by Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, and others, and they used that factual finding. But you're right, Jack Smith, who investigated this, did not charge insurrection. And I think the other thing that we need to do is the historical context is very important. The people that wrote the 14th Amendment and Section 3 of that knew what an insurrection was. They had just seen hundreds of thousands of their fellow citizens killed in a war between the states. And so they knew what an insurrection was. And in this case, there was a riot at the Capitol. Those people that participated were held accountable and have been prosecuted for that. But, at the end of the day, President Trump said, go peacefully and patriotically and have your voices heard. And this court just ignores anything that is evidence that helps President Trump. And the Supreme Court of the United States will clearly have the final say on this, and I expect they will reverse this ruling.
So we hope that's the case, the Supreme Court reversing this, Greg, because I had a lot of folks say to me, well, can't we just write in Trump's name in Colorado? But I have a line from the opinion here. The opinion in Colorado says the secretary may not list President Trump's name on the 2024 presidential primary ballot, nor may she count any write-in votes cast for him. Literally taking away the will of the people.
Yeah, this is election rigging, Kayleigh. It was a narrow 4-3 decision. It will almost certainly, in my judgment, be overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court because the insurrection clause in the 14th Amendment, as you point out, don't apply to the facts here. It was intended to prevent Confederates who literally took up arms against the government during the Civil War from holding office. So you fast forward now 150 years roughly, and Donald Trump is not even accused of insurrection under the federal statute. And if evidence supported that, surely Jack Smith, as special counsel, would have charged him with it. So to remove Trump from the ballot for an offense that he hasn't even been tried or convicted of, what is that? Well, that's violating his right to due process, which just happens to be guaranteed by the very amendment, the 14th, and elsewhere in the Constitution. But, there's another factor here, Kayleigh. This as a lawyer. Under past Supreme Court rulings, the language used in the insurrection clause doesn't apply to the office of president or anybody running for it. Colorado officials here have, I think, brazenly manipulated the clause for purely political reasons. Another example of election interference by Trump opponents. This is an effort, make no mistake, to deprive American voters of their right to make the decision as to who should be president. It is anti-democratic. It's the equivalent of rigging the ballot box, and it will surely be seen that way, only inflaming voters and I think boosting support for the former president.
And Matthew, Greg makes a really important point right there. And there's been peer-reviewed articles written on this. Josh Blackman, a professor down in Texas, has made the point Greg just made, which is this is not intended to apply to the president, Section 3, another argument in the president's corner. But you're confident the Supreme Court overturns this?
Yeah, I am. And to that point, this talks about officers, but lists, many, Senate, Congress, many offices that could be held, but it specifically excludes the office of the president. Now, the Supreme Court of Colorado says officer includes the president, but, you know, there have been other state Supreme Courts that have looked at this. There have been other courts that have looked at this issue, and nobody's been willing to go out as far as this Supreme Court of Colorado has. And, you know, I mean, the left is celebrating this today, but, you know, just remember, you know, you have 7 Democrats that were appointed by Democrat governors, and, you know, I just see this as a completely partisan attempt. And, you know, if you think about what the left is trying to do, they know that Joe Biden is very weak. The polls are not good for him. His policies are not working, especially on the southern border and in so many other places. And so many Americans are dying of fentanyl. I think this is an attempt by Democrat activist judges in Colorado to give Joe Biden a boost.
Matt Whitaker, Greg Jarrett, thank you for your expertise. Joining us now with reaction, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. Senator Vance, great to have you this evening. I'm going to ask our team to pull up this map, the map we showed at the beginning of the show. You see there have been 31 such cases across the United States. No coincidence they want to do this in places like Texas or South Carolina, because you lose a solid red state, it becomes exceedingly difficult to win a national election. Is this yet another rendition of the Russia hoax, Hunter Biden laptop disinformation, all in an effort to stop Donald J. Trump?
Yeah, Kayleigh, it's an effort to stop Donald Trump, not at the ballot box, because right now they don't think they can beat Donald Trump at the ballot box, but to use lawfare, to use the legal process as a political weapon to take rights away from American voters. I will repeat this again and again. This is not just about Donald Trump. This is about millions of American voters who are being told by judges in Colorado, you don't get to vote for the candidate that you would like to vote for. How is that democracy? And how is this in any way consistent with the howls of Republicans allegedly being a threat to democracy, and then left-wing judges are telling Americans you don't get to vote for the candidate that you want to vote for? It's preposterous, Kayleigh. Here's another thing, and just to make a political point, you've had brilliant legal analysts. The question, I think, for Republican voters is, do we let left-wing radicals choose our nominee? They are staring us in the face saying, we dare you to select Donald Trump as your nominee. I think we take that bet and we go with the guy who's showing that he's not controlled opposition. If we are letting these people select our nominee for us, what good are we as a party? There are some great people running, but this is now, to me, an assault not just on one man, but on the Republican Party's ability to select its nominee for the general election.
For sure. And to that end, I want to pull up this tweet. So this is Vivek Ramaswamy. We don't have it, but I'll read it for you. He basically says he's removing his name from the Colorado ballot in solidarity, not just with Trump, but with, to your point, Republicans picking their own nominee, and he's calling on the rest of the contenders in the party to remove their names from the Colorado ballot. Your thoughts on that?
Good for Vivek. Good for somebody for actually standing up, a competitor of Donald Trump in the primary, for standing up and saying this is completely unacceptable. The one thing I've been heartened by, Kayleigh, is the response to this is not just Trump allies, but across the political spectrum, even a number of Democrats are saying this is just crazy. Do the American people get to decide who their president is or not? Because these judges are saying the answer is no, we decide for you, and we've got to stand up and push back against this stuff.
Senator Vance, last question. Professor Josh Blackman, who I referenced in our previous with our previous guest, said this would be the single biggest disenfranchisement in modern history. Do you think the Supreme Court puts a stop to this and ends these radical leftist groups from trying to stop the will of the American people?
I certainly hope that they will, and I actually think that they will. I think the Supreme Court has to step in here and protect the rights of American voters. We have to remember, Kayleigh, that they have tried to throw President Donald Trump's lawyers in prison for challenging some of the election results in the election of 2020. If you should be thrown in prison for challenging election results, exercising your First Amendment rights, what do we do to the people who are trying to disenfranchise hundreds of thousands of American voters? This is craziness. Somebody has to put a stop to it. I hope the Supreme Court steps up to the plate.
It's unbelievable. Sometimes I can't believe the country I'm living in. Thank you very much, Senator Vance.